the small crowned heir who chose love over destiny. The child was born under a quiet sky, not a storm, not fire, not thunder. This surprised the elders. Every story said the chosen ruler would arrive with signs, but the night was calm, and the stars above the capital world did not move at all. Still, when the crown lights turned blue across the palace towers, everyone knew a royal birth had taken place. The empire stretched across many systems. Ships moved like slow insects between stars. Worlds obeyed the throne because they feared it, and because they believed in destiny. Destiny was older than the empire itself. It was written in stone halls, carved into metal rings, and whispered by machines that never slept. The child was small when he was placed on the silver table. He did not cry. He only looked around with wide eyes, dark and calm, as if he was already watching and judging the world. When the elder council saw the faint mark on his shoulder, shaped like a broken circle, they bowed at once. The mark meant one thing: the heir had arrived. From that moment, the child did not belong to himself. He was raised inside the high palace, where walls were smooth and cold, and light came from the ceiling instead of the sun. He never walked barefoot on soil. He never touched rain. Every hour of his life was measured. Tutors taught him numbers, history, and the laws of war, before he learned how to laugh. The elders told him the same words again and again. He was chosen. He was needed. The empire would fall without him. The stars themselves waited for his command, but the child did not feel powerful. He felt heavy. When he was 5, he asked his first forbidden question: "Why do other worlds fear us?" The tutor froze. His face became stiff, like stone. He answered carefully, "Fear brings order. Order brings peace." The child nodded, but his eyes showed doubt. At night, when the palace slept, he dreamed of endless lines of ships burning the dark. He woke with his hands shaking, even though no one had touched him. As the years passed, ceremonies filled his days. He stood on balconies while crowds bowed. He wore a small crown that felt too large for his head. Voices shouted praise, but none sounded real. They all echoed like empty halls. One day, during a long ceremony, his eyes wandered away from the nobles and machines. Down below, near the outer steps, he saw someone different. A girl stood among the workers. She was young, thin, wearing plain clothes. She carried a box of tools and had grease on her hands. Unlike everyone else, she was not looking at the crown. She was looking at the sky. Her face held wonder, not fear. For a moment she turned and met his eyes. She smiled. It was small and quick, but it struck him harder than any lesson. No one had ever smiled at him like that, not because he was the heir, not because he was chosen. Just a simple smile, like one person greeting another. The guards moved, blocking his view. The ceremony ended, but the moment stayed with him. That night, he could not sleep. Days later, he asked to walk through the lower halls. This was unusual, but the elders allowed it, thinking it harmless. Guards followed closely as he passed storage rooms and service paths rarely seen by nobles. And there she was again. The girl knelt near a wall panel, repairing a flickering light. She looked up when shadows fell over her. Her eyes widened when she realized who stood before her. She quickly bowed. "You do not have to do that," the child said without thinking. The guards stiffened, but said nothing. The girl hesitated. Slowly, she stood. "Yes, my lord," she said, but her voice did not shake. He studied her. She looked tired, but alive in a way the palace never was. "What is your name?" he asked. She paused, then spoke. "I am called Lena." A simple name, no titles. They stood in silence until a guard cleared his throat. The child turned away, but something inside him had changed. From that day on, he found reasons to pass through the lower halls. Sometimes he spoke to Lena. Sometimes he only watched. She talked about small things, broken tools, long shifts, dreams of seeing other stars. She never spoke of destiny. He began to see the palace differently. The walls felt closer. The lessons felt louder. The elders' voices felt sharper. When he turned 10, the elders gathered him in the deep chamber. It was a room few entered, filled with old machines and dark stone. A spear floated in the center, glowing faintly. "This is the record," the lead elder said. "It holds the path of the empire." The sphere opened. Images spilled into the air. Wars, burning worlds, victories carved in blood and fire. Then came a new image. Hard wide. A small blue world. Green land. Wide water. Weak defenses. "Another species rises," the elder said. "Slow now. But they learn fast. They multiply. They adapt." The child watched families moving across fields. Children running. No weapons in sight. "They will become a threat," the elder continued. "The record is clear. You will end them." The child felt cold. "When?" he asked. "When you come of age," the elder said. "You will lead the strike." "That is your destiny." The spear closed. The chamber fell silent. That night, the child stood alone on his balcony. Stars filled the sky, beautiful and distant. Somewhere among them lived the people from the image. They did not know him. They did not fear him, yet their fate was already decided. He felt sick. Days later, he found Lena working near the gardens. "Do you believe the future can change?" he asked suddenly. She looked at him, surprised. "Everything changes," she said. "Even stars die. But what if it is written?" he asked. She wiped her hands on her cloth. "Then someone wrote it. And someone can erase it." Her words stayed with him. Soon after, the palace buzzed with tension. Ships moved, commands flowed. The empire prepared for war. Though the people were told it was only a test, the child was summoned again to the deep chamber. The elders placed a small data ring in his hands. "This contains the final path," the lead elder said. "Study it, accept it." The child took the ring. It felt warm, almost alive. That night, he opened it alone. The images were... He saw himself older, taller, standing on a command deck. He saw fleets firing. He saw the blue world burning. He saw silence where life had been. He dropped the ring. For the first time, the chosen heir cried. Outside his room, unseen by guards and machines, the stars continued to shine, unaware that the future of many worlds rested on the heart of a small crowned child who no longer believed. Years passed, and the heir grew taller, though he always felt small beneath the weight of his crown. The golden palace became a prison he could see, but not truly enter. Each day, lessons piled upon lessons. History of battles, strategy of conquest, the rules of obedience. Yet every time he learned about victory, he remembered Lena's words. Everything changes, even stars die. The child he had been now stood on the balcony of the largest tower. His crown had grown heavier, but his heart had grown heavier too. He often wandered near the lower halls, pretending to inspect the workers, only to see Lena. She had grown braver, moving through the corridors freely, speaking openly to other workers. Her simple smile still struck him in a way the elders never could. One afternoon he asked her to walk with him in the gardens hidden behind the palace walls. The gardens were wild, a place where the palace forgot to control nature. Flowers leaned toward the sun, weeds twisted around stones, and the air smelled like earth instead of metal. Lena led him to a small pond where fish flicked beneath the surface. "Why do you always come here?" she asked. "To see life that is not measured or ordered," he said. He crouched and let his fingers touch the water. The ripples spread and distorted the reflection of his face. "Everything else is rules. Machines." Predictions. Lena smiled. Life is more than rules. Even if someone says it is not. He watched her eyes. They were bright, steady, alive. She did not fear him. She did not fear the Empire. For the first time he felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the throne or prophecy. In the weeks that followed, he began to sneak out more often, visiting the lower districts beyond the palace gates. The streets were narrow, lined with small houses and markets. Children played with sticks and cloth balls. Women carried food or water. Men repaired broken machines. There was laughter here, quiet but persistent. There were no soldiers, no machines, no endless speeches about destiny. He saw hunger in some faces. He saw fear in others. He saw courage in children who ran to help one another. The Empire had taught him to see these people as weak, as obstacles to control, as nothing. Now he saw humans, alive, resilient, beautiful in ways the palace could not measure. One evening he returned to the palace, heart heavy with questions. The elders summoned him. They had news. "Your time draws near," said the lead elder. "The human colony we spoke of is ready to be subdued. Their defenses are minimal. They will fall quickly. You will lead the first strike. This is your duty. This is destiny." The heir's stomach turned. He remembered the blue world, the families, the children. He remembered Lena's words. He remembered the gardens. He could not speak. "You must answer," the elder pressed.
"The Empire cannot wait."
He began, but no words came. The elder's eyes narrowed. "Do you deny your destiny?" He wanted to shout yes, to run, to hide among the stars, but he only bowed his head. "I will follow my path," he said, his voice hollow. That night, he could not sleep. He stared at the ceiling, imagining the human colony. He imagined himself on the bridge of a fleet, giving orders, watching life vanish under his command. The thought made him shiver. The next day, he visited Lena in secret. She worked near the repair docks, her hands stained with grease and oil. She looked up at him and smiled.
"You seem troubled," she said.
He walked closer, lowering his voice. "I have to lead them. I have to destroy them." Lena's eyes widened. "Then you do not see what they are? They are people, like us. They do not wish for war. They are—" He nodded. "I know. But the Empire, the elders, the prophecy." She touched his arm lightly. "Prophecy is a story written by those who want control. It is not a law of the stars. You can choose. You must choose." He looked at her, at the small, stubborn flame in her eyes. A plan began to form. though it scared him more than anything else. The day came when the fleet prepared to launch. Ships filled the hangar, humming with engines and anticipation. Soldiers stood in perfect rows. Machines followed commands faster than humans could think. The Heir walked through them, crown heavy, eyes empty, heart torn. He stepped onto the command deck. The view was incredible. Stars stretched endlessly. Below, the human colony appeared on the main screen. Simple settlements, farms, smoke rising from cooking fires. Children ran through fields. Families moved slowly, unaware of the destiny hanging over them. The commanders expected him to speak, to order the strike. To prove himself, he lifted his hand. His fingers hovered over the holographic controls. But a single word from him, and the first ships would fire. But he hesitated. Every lesson of obedience screamed in his head. Every story of conquest and empire demanded loyalty. Yet, in his chest, a new voice had grown stronger. Lena's voice. The voice of life and choice. He gave a false command. The engines delayed. The fleet slowed. Confusion spread. Generals shouted questions. Alarms rang across the bridge. "This is treason," one commander cried. "He is defying the Empire." The Heir's face remained calm. "Orders adjusted," he said softly. "Patience is needed." The generals did not understand. They saw only betrayal. Yet he had done what he felt was right. For the first time in his life, he acted not as the chosen heir, not as destiny's tool, but as a human being. The Empire's monitors quickly detected the anomaly. Reports raced to the elders. The council in the palace chamber erupted in anger. "Treason!" they shouted. "He must be punished." The heir's chambers were guarded immediately. Soldiers entered, taking control of the fleet. The young heir was arrested and brought back to the palace, chains around his wrists. He did not struggle. His eyes remained fixed on the stars outside the window. Lena was hidden in the shadows, watching. She knew that helping him now would be dangerous, but she could not stay away. Later, she crept to his room and whispered through the barred window. "You have started something," she said, "something that will not be stopped." He looked at her.
"I do not want war," he said. "Then you will need courage," she replied.
"More than you have ever known." The next days were filled with whispers and plotting. The Empire prepared for punishment. Soldiers and machines watched the young heir constantly. The public continued to celebrate him, unaware of the hesitation, the act of mercy that had already changed the future. In secret, the heir and Lena began to plan. If he stayed in the palace, he would be forced to leave the fleet. If he acted, he risked death. Every choice was dangerous. Every moment was suspense. The Empire demanded obedience. The human colony demanded mercy. And the stars above, silent and infinite, seemed to wait for his decision. The part ended with the heir standing on his balcony at night, staring at the distant blue world he could not destroy. The wind moved through the palace towers. He thought of Lena's smile, of the gardens, of the children playing, and he whispered to himself, "Maybe destiny is not written in stone." The heir sat in the shadowed chamber, chains binding his wrists, the cold metal biting into his skin. The walls were smooth and lifeless, like the entire palace had been emptied of warmth. Outside, the Empire continued its work as if nothing had happened, preparing fleets, sending messages, following orders, believing destiny would be fulfilled. But for the first time, the heir had broken the chain of expectation. The generals and guards moved around him like predators circling a wounded prey. Some whispered quietly about his betrayal. Others watched openly with suspicion. Every eye was on him. Every step he took was measured, yet he did not struggle. He had accepted the risk. He had chosen to act not for power, but for life. Lena came that night, slipping silently through the lower halls. She had risked her life just to reach him. Her face was pale, her hands trembling, but her eyes were steady. "They will not forgive you," she said, touching the cold chains. "The elders, the council, they see mercy as weakness. They will move against you with everything they have." The heir looked at her, his eyes dark. "Then I must move first," he said. "I cannot wait for them to decide."
I will not be their tool. Lena nodded, understanding immediately. She had seen this moment coming for years.
"We will meet a plan," she said. "You cannot fight them alone. The palace is too strong. The fleets too many. We must be clever. We must be fast." The heir had been trained in strategy since he could walk. Battles, wars, diplomacy, fleet movement. He knew all of it. But this was different. This was not a war of armies. This was survival against the empire itself. The people who had raised him, taught him, and called him destiny now sought his life. They spent the night planning quietly. Maps of the empire flickered on small devices Lena had brought. Escape routes, hidden corridors, weak points in security. Each detail was noted. Each plan relied on speed, trust, and the element of surprise. The next morning, the chamber doors opened. Soldiers entered with trays of food and data reports. The heir did not eat. He watched them. Every movement, every glance, every hesitation. He noticed cracks in their formation. Human soldiers, even trained to obey, had doubts. Doubts were dangerous, but also useful. A guard stepped forward.
"You will eat," he said firmly. "It is the order of the council."
The heir shook his head. "I do not need your orders. You may leave." The guard froze, unsure. The heir's voice had a quiet authority. Not the voice of destiny, not the voice of prophecy, but the voice of someone who had seen the truth of the world beyond the walls. The guard left reluctantly, and the heir felt the smallest victory of many to come. In the days that followed, tension grew. The fleet was still ready to strike. Commands from the palace were sent to every ship. Orders were strict. The chosen heir was supposed to lead, and the empire expected obedience. Yet the delay he had caused in the last command created uncertainty. Generals questioned each other. Ships moved slower than expected. Confusion spread. The human colony, unaware of the approaching storm, continued its simple life. Children played in fields. Farmers harvested crops. Families prepared for celebrations. And, far above them, unseen, a force meant to destroy them hesitated. Inside the palace, the heir began to move subtly. He observed the guards, noting which were loyal only to the council and which had faint doubts in their eyes. Lena helped him hide small tools, devices, and messages. Together they created a network, small but effective. Every whisper, every glance, every shadow became part of their plan. One evening, as the sun set behind the pale towers of the capital, a report arrived. One of the star systems, loyal to the Empire, had sent a request for reinforcements. Their fleet was prepared to join the attack. This could have meant certain destruction if the heir did nothing. He knew then that waiting was no longer an option. He had to act immediately. At night, he moved through secret corridors, guided by Lena. Every step was measured. Every breath was quiet. They avoided patrols, cameras, and mechanical sentries. His heart pounded, not from fear of death, but from the weight of responsibility. Every moment he delayed could cost innocent lives. They reached the hangar where smaller ships were kept, ships capable of fast travel but not heavy attack. These ships could help him escape the palace and reach the fleet before it fired. He touched one, feeling its cold metal surface. It was a symbol of hope in the midst of control. As they prepared to move, a guard appeared unexpectedly. Lena froze, but the Heir acted quickly. He pressed a small device she had hidden in his sleeve. A flash of light stunned the guard just long enough for them to slip past. The palace was vast, but the Heir knew it as if it were an extension of his mind. Every hallway, every chamber, every ventilation shaft was mapped in his memory. They moved swiftly, silently, reaching the hangar without raising alarms. Once inside, the Heir activated the ships. The engines hummed softly, ready for launch. He looked at Lena. "This is only the beginning," he said. She nodded. "The Empire will not let you leave. They will send everything they have to stop you." He understood. He had no illusions. He was not a hero yet. He was only a boy who had chosen life over destiny. But that choice had already begun a chain reaction. They lifted off quietly, leaving the palace behind. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and cold. The Heir watched the distant blue world below, the human colony he had saved from the first strike. A wave of relief passed through him, but it was brief. He knew this was only the start. The fleet had already detected the delay. Generals questioned each other. Soldiers murmured about the Heir's loyalty. The Empire began to fracture. Even before he reached the first battleship, reports came of small rebellions, minor insubordination, but enough to slow the preparations. The Heir used every lesson he had learned. He avoided detection, moved through shadowed corridors of space stations, and sent messages to sympathetic soldiers. Slowly he built a network. Small, fragile, but effective. The Empire was large, but human ingenuity was faster. In the following days, he reached the fleet. He was not welcomed. The commanders eyed him with suspicion, anger, and hatred. Yet he spoke calmly, showing proof of the false commands that had prevented the first strike, evidence of tampering, data that proved the humans were not a threat. Some soldiers believed him. Some remained loyal to the council. Tension filled the bridges of the ships. Arguments flared. Engines roared. Alarms echoed. The Heir realized that convincing minds was as difficult as surviving attacks. Meanwhile, the human colony continued to live unaware. Children ran in the fields. Families cooked, worked, and laughed. The Heir remembered their faces from the sphere he had seen years ago. He remembered every detail. He vowed that no harm would come to them if he could prevent it. But the Empire would not forget. Orders were sent to intercept the ships carrying the Heir. Battle-ready fleets moved silently through space, ready to destroy the one who had defied destiny. The Heir knew conflict was inevitable. He prepared strategies, using speed, surprise, and human intuition. He thought of Lena constantly, her courage, her trust, her belief in life over duty. That she was his anchor, his strength. Without her, he would be lost in the endless calculations of war and obedience. With her, he felt capable of anything. The first confrontation came sooner than expected. Empire's ships approached, scanning for signs of escape. The Heir gave orders to maneuver carefully, avoiding detection. Systems blinked with warnings, engines strained, and tension grew among his small crew. Suddenly, One of the Empire's ships detected them. The alarms screamed. Soldiers shouted. Panic flared briefly, then vanished as the Heir calmly took control. Using evasive maneuvers he had studied as a child, he led the ships through asteroid fields, narrow gaps, and dangerous gravity wells. Each movement precise, each choice critical. They escaped. The first strike of defiance succeeded. The Heir's confidence grew, but so did the danger. Every act of mercy, every decision to protect life, brought them closer to open war. The Empire would not forgive hesitation. They would not accept compassion as a strategy. The Heir watched the stars outside, thinking of all the worlds that waited silently, unaware of the power he now wielded not through destiny, but through choice. He realized that being a leader meant more than giving orders. It meant understanding life, valuing it, protecting it even when the universe expected destruction. He smiled faintly at Lena. "We are only beginning," he said. She returned the smile, small but firm. "And we will continue." No matter what comes, they were no longer just the Heir and the servant girl. They were the start of something new, a force that would challenge destiny itself, a spark of humanity in an empire that had long forgotten its meaning. The stars stretched endlessly. The human colony waited unknowingly. The Empire prepared for retaliation. And in the middle of it all, a small crowned heir, choosing life over prophecy, began to shape the future not with power, but with courage, compassion, and love. The part ended with the Heir standing on the deck of the lead ship, staring at the galaxy. He whispered softly, more to himself than anyone else, "I will not be the tool of destiny. I will be the hand that chooses." The Heir moved silently through the shadows of the fleet, his mind sharp and alert. Every system he passed, every officer he spoke to, reminded him that he had chosen a dangerous path. He was no longer just a boy in a crown. He was a fugitive, a leader, a symbol of defiance. And the Empire would not forgive. Lena stayed close, moving with him like a shadow, her eyes always scanning for danger. She had learned quickly how to navigate the ships, how to operate controls, and how to read the signals from fleets moving silently through the void. She trusted him completely, and he trusted her as completely. Together they were a team no machine or general could easily break. The first days were tense but quiet. The Heir used the time to strengthen his small network. Soldiers who had doubts about the Empire's mission quietly joined him. Engineers and navigators, loyal not to the Council but to the idea of justice, helped prepare the ships. Every small act, every whispered plan, built a fragile but growing rebellion within the Empire itself. He remembered the blue world below, the human colony that had been spared. Their simple life, their unarmed courage, inspired him. The Empire had taught him that strength came from weapons, from fleets, from fear. But he now understood another kind of strength, the strength to protect, to choose, to defy orders when life was at stake. Then the Empire responded. The first fleet of interceptors arrived quietly, scanners glowing, engines silent, until they roared to life in the blackness of space. The Heir and his allies had little time to react. Alarms blared across the ships. Soldiers scrambled. Lena's voice cut through the tension. "They are here. Stay calm. Follow my lead." The Heir's hands moved over the controls, issuing orders with precision. Engines fired, shields rose, and ships weaved through the void. The interceptors moved fast, but the Heir had studied their patterns. He anticipated every maneuver, every blind spot, every weakness. Still, the enemy was relentless. One ship fired unexpectedly, hitting a small supply vessel. Explosions rocked the fleet. Sparks flew through corridors. Soldiers shouted and ran. The Heir stayed focused. Every decision now meant life or death, not just for him, but for those under his command and the innocent humans below. In the chaos, Lena directed small teams to repair damage and protect the crew. Her calm, steady voice carried over the alarms.
Move fast! Cover the engines!
Protect the bridges! She ran from one control station to another, her movements precise and confident. The Heir realized as he watched her that her courage was as important as any fleet or weapon. The battle lasted hours, each second stretching longer than any day the Heir had known in the palace. The interceptors tried to trap them, to force a surrender, but the Heir used cunning, speed, and knowledge to outmaneuver them. They slipped through asteroid fields, ducked behind dying stars, and vanished into shadows of space where no enemy could follow easily. By the time the battle ended, both fleets were damaged. The Heir's ships were battered, but no one was killed. The interceptors retreated to report their failure. The Empire would send more, stronger fleets, but the Heir had bought time. Time was the most valuable weapon he now possessed. In the aftermath, the Heir addressed his small crew. "We cannot fight them all directly," he said. "The Empire has too many resources. But we can protect life. We can slow them, and we can inspire others to stand with us." The soldiers and officers nodded. Some were inspired by his courage, others still feared punishment. But slowly, respect replaced fear. The Heir was no longer just a crown. He was a choice. A living example that the Empire's destiny could be challenged. Lena approached him later, her face bruised from the battle, her hands shaking slightly. "You saved them," she said quietly, meaning the humans below. "I did what I had to," he replied, "and I will continue to do so. Every time they threaten life, I will stop them." The days that followed were filled with planning. The Heir and Lena studied reports, traced fleets, and sent secret messages to allies across the Empire. They discovered pockets of resistance, people tired of endless war, people who remembered the Empire before it became machines and rules. Slowly, an invisible network formed, ready to rise when the time was right, but danger was constant. The Empire's council was furious. They sent spies, saboteurs, and even assassination attempts. Every day, the Heir had to move carefully, trust few, and think several steps ahead. Mistakes could mean death. The weight of responsibility grew heavier than the crown ever had. One night, the Heir looked out at the stars and thought of the humans below. Children ran through fields, unaware of the fleets above them. Families lived in peace, trusting the universe to continue. And for a moment the Heir realized that this simple life, this fragile human courage, was worth every risk, worth every chain, every battle, every plan made in shadowed rooms. He turned to Lena. "We cannot stay hidden forever. The Empire will send more ships. We must strike, but carefully. We must protect life, and we must grow stronger." Lena nodded. "And if we fail?" He looked at her steadily. "Then we try again, and again, until we succeed." The Heir's words spread quietly through the fleet, through secret messages, through whispered conversations. Slowly, fear turned to hope. Soldiers who had once followed orders blindly began to question. Officers who had trained their entire lives to obey began to see choice, and somewhere in the shadows, Allies prepared, waiting for the signal to rise. The human colony remained unaware, but their lives hung delicately in the balance. The Heir watched the blue and green planet through his ship's viewport, imagining the children playing, the families cooking, the farmers tending their land. Every life below became a reason to fight, a reason to risk everything. The council and the palace grew restless. Reports came of strange delays, of soldiers refusing orders, of fleets not moving as expected. The elder in charge of strategy called an emergency meeting. They decided to send the strongest fleet yet, commanded by a veteran general known for ruthless efficiency. The Heir would not survive another encounter if they found him unprepared. The tension grew in the fleet. Every moment became suspense. Every choice could lead to victory or destruction. The Heir realized that leadership was no longer about crowns or prophecy. It was about courage, strategy, and protecting life when the universe demanded otherwise. Lena approached him in the control room. "They will come," she said softly. "We cannot hide. We must fight, but differently. We cannot destroy to protect life. We must be clever, and we must trust the humans." He nodded. "I will not give them to the Empire. I will not let destiny decide. I will protect them. And we will find a way." They prepared the fleet, not just for defense, but for intelligence, observation, and diversion. Every ship, every soldier, every calculation was aimed at keeping life safe, at preserving choice in a universe that demanded obedience. The night before the next battle, the Heir walked through the fleet, speaking to soldiers quietly, offering hope. Some were inspired. Some still feared death. But he did not promise safety. He promised choice. And choice, he realized, was more powerful than any weapon. When the first signs of the Empire's new fleet appeared, the Heir's heart raced. Lena stood beside him, calm and ready. Engines hummed. Alarms screamed. Sensors blinked. And yet, he felt strength not from machines or fleets, but from human courage and the decision he had made long ago, to protect life, to defy destiny, to choose love over power. The Empire advanced, expecting obedience, expecting fear. They found resistance. They found strategy. They found a young heir and a servant girl who had become more than shadows. They found the spark of humanity, refusing to be silenced. And for the first time, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The part ended with the Heir standing on the bridge of his lead ship, hands steady on the controls, eyes fixed on the approaching enemy. Beside him, Lena's presence was a quiet reminder of why he fought, and in the distance the human colony continued its life, unaware that the smallest choices in the vast universe had begun to change everything. He whispered softly to the stars, "We will protect life, no matter what comes." The Heir felt the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. The Empire's response to his defiance was coming, stronger than anything he had faced. Reports reached him from across space, fleets moving faster, new warships constructed, weapons designed to destroy without mercy. The Council was furious. They had not expected their chosen heir to defy them, and now they saw total retribution. Lena moved beside him quietly, her face tense but determined. She had been through battles, evasions, and escapes. Yet this was different. This threat was larger than any before. She placed a hand lightly on his arm. "They will try to break you. They will try to force you back to destiny. You must be stronger than them, not with weapons, but with choice." He nodded, feeling a cold determination settle in his chest. Choice had become his weapon. Compassion had become his shield. But now, the stakes were higher than ever. The Empire was preparing to use an ancient weapon, one that could erase entire systems, a weapon designed to enforce destiny itself. The fleet moved cautiously. Every ship carried the tension of imminent battle. Soldiers whispered anxiously. Some had joined the Heir willingly, others had been forced by circumstance. But all now understood that the coming confrontation would decide more than territory. It would decide the future of countless lives. Lena helped the Heir navigate the fleet using both strategy and intuition. They avoided patrols, anticipated enemy movements, and positioned their ships to protect the human colonies below. Every decision was critical. One mistake could allow the Empire to fire the ultimate weapon, and billions of lives would be lost. The Heir's mind kept returning to the blue world, the humans who had unknowingly survived his first act of mercy. He imagined their families, children playing in fields, farmers working the soil. He imagined the joy in their simple lives, and he promised himself that he would protect them, no matter the cost. The first signs of the Empire's ultimate weapon appeared on the sensors. A massive structure moving in orbit around a distant star, energy building, engines humming, with an intensity that made even hardened soldiers shiver. The Heir studied it, analyzing every weak point, every vulnerable system. He realized that direct attack would be suicide. The weapon could destroy his fleet in moments. He turned to Lena. "We cannot fight it directly," he said. "We must find another way. We must shut it down before it fires." She nodded. "We will need courage and sacrifice." The plan took shape slowly. They would split the fleet into smaller groups, create distractions, and infiltrate the control center of the weapon itself. The Heir volunteered to lead the strike team. He would go himself, knowing that the Empire's eyes were on him. Every move he made would be watched. Every decision could mean death. When the fleet moved into position, the Empire responded immediately. Interceptors surrounded them, weapons primed, engines roaring. The Heir's fleet wove through asteroid belts and gas clouds, using every tactic he had learned, every skill he had practiced, every lesson from the palace and beyond. Ships dodged fire, shields held, and lives were preserved. Finally, the Heir and Lena approached the weapon. Its scale was terrifying, massive, glowing, humming with destructive energy. It seemed alive in its power. Sensors warned them, if they approached too closely, they could be incinerated in moments. Yet the Heir was not afraid. He had faced the weight of destiny before. Now he faced the weight of life itself. They infiltrated the weapon's outer defenses, using stealth ships and precise timing. Soldiers guarding the control chambers were skilled, but human cunning and ingenuity proved stronger than blind obedience. The Heir and Lena moved with precision, avoiding unnecessary conflict, disabling systems quietly, carefully, effectively. Inside the control chamber, the Heir saw the central console. Lights blinked, energy pulsed, and the countdown had already begun. The weapon was ready to fire. The Empire expected obedience, expected the Heir to take his place as the executor of destruction. Instead, he prepared to stop it. Lena worked beside him, her hands moving quickly over control panels, rerouting power, shutting down systems. The Heir focused on the main console, tracing energy flows, searching for the central core that powered the weapon. Every second was critical. The countdown continued. Suddenly, an alarm screamed. Soldiers entered the chamber, weapons raised. The Heir stood calmly. He did not fight. He only moved with precision, guiding Lena and giving commands to the crew outside. The soldiers hesitated, unsure of how to confront the Heir who was both crown and rebel, both symbol and person. The heir realized that there was only one way to shut down the weapon completely. He would have to sacrifice the throne, the symbol of destiny itself, to destroy the core. The thought struck him with a weight heavier than any chain or crown. He looked at Lena. "I must do this," he said. She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Then I will stay with you. We face it together." The heir approached the core. Energy pulsed around him, lighting his face with an otherworldly glow. He could feel the power trying to command him, trying to pull him back into the destiny the Empire had written for him. But he resisted. Choice, compassion, and love were stronger than any prophecy. He activated the shutdown sequence. Energy surged, alarms screamed, systems overloaded. The chamber shook violently. Lena held his hand, steadying him, reminding him of what they were protecting. The countdown halted. The weapon shuddered, then died. Silence followed. The threat was gone. The Empire's fleet recoiled, unsure of what had happened. Some soldiers whispered of treason. Some officers realized that the heir had done what they could not. He had preserved life. Reports spread quickly through the galaxy. The ultimate weapon was destroyed. The heir had defied destiny, and countless lives were saved. But victory came at a cost. The throne, the symbol of the Empire's prophecy, was destroyed in the core's shutdown. The heir would never rule. He had sacrificed everything to protect life, to choose love and compassion over power and conquest. Lena stood beside him, bruised and exhausted, but alive. Together they left the chamber, moving through silent halls and damaged corridors. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, unchanged, indifferent, yet somehow waiting. The galaxy had been given a choice, and the heir had made it. As they returned to the fleet, soldiers began to look at the heir differently. No longer just a boy, no longer just the crown. He was now a symbol of hope. His defiance had inspired others to question obedience, to value life, to see that the Empire's destiny was not the only path. The human colony remained unaware of the battle that had saved them. Families continued their daily lives, children ran through fields, and farmers worked the soil. The heir imagined their faces, their laughter, their courage. Every life below had been preserved through his choice, and he felt the quiet satisfaction of a promise kept. The Empire was fractured. Some systems still obeyed the Council, but others began to rise, inspired by the heir's defiance. Small rebellions appeared, soldiers and citizens questioning orders, refusing to destroy life, choosing compassion over obedience. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, quietly, but irrevocably. The heir walked through the fleet, speaking quietly to soldiers. "We are not here to conquer," he said. "We are here to protect, to choose, to be more than tools of destiny. Every life matters. Every choice matters." Lena moved beside him, smiling faintly. "You saved more than just a world. You saved hope." The heir looked out at the stars, infinite, silent, and beautiful. The galaxy was no longer just a place of power and fear. It was a place of choice, courage, and life. He realized that this was the true strength of humanity, the real reason for hope. And though he had sacrificed the throne, he had gained something more valuable: freedom. Freedom to live, to protect, to choose, and freedom to love. The part ended with the heir standing on the bridge of the lead ship, hands resting lightly on the controls, Lena beside him. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and in the quiet between engines and alarms, the heir whispered softly, more to himself than anyone else, "We will protect life. We will choose love." and we will shape a future no destiny can control. The heir had walked through fire and shadow, defied destiny, and protected life where the Empire demanded destruction. Now, as the galaxy slowly settled after the chaos, he understood that his journey was not over, but a new chapter had begun. The ultimate weapon had been destroyed. The throne, the symbol of prophecy, no longer existed. The Empire was fractured, and countless lives had been saved because one small crowned heir chose love over power. The fleet drifted in quiet space, stars stretching infinitely in every direction. Ships moved cautiously, repaired and prepared for the future. Soldiers and officers whispered of what had happened, of courage that had never been taught in academies or carved into stone. They whispered of mercy, of choice, of a boy who had refused to be a tool of destiny. Lena stood beside the heir on the lead ship's bridge, her face tired but resolute. Her hand brushed his, a quiet reminder of everything they had endured together. "The Empire is not finished," she said softly. "There are still forces that will resist change. They will try to rebuild what we destroyed." The heir nodded. "We cannot stop them all. But we can show another way. We can protect life and inspire others to see that there is more than power. There is choice, and there is hope." He thought of the humans below, the blue world that had once been the target of destruction. Families were living, children were laughing, and life continued. The heir smiled faintly. This was the reason he had acted, the reason he had risked everything. Life, fragile and stubborn, had been preserved, and in that preservation the galaxy had gained something new. The following weeks were a time of rebuilding. The heir traveled quietly through the fleet, speaking to soldiers, engineers, and officers. He encouraged them to value life, to question orders that demanded destruction, and to embrace compassion as a strength rather than weakness. Slowly, systems that had once obeyed blindly began to see the Empire differently. Resistance grew, not as rebellion for power, but as resistance for life. Meanwhile, Lena worked tirelessly to repair damaged ships, coordinate communications, and protect the small communities that were emerging in liberated space. Her courage and skill were unmatched, and the heir knew that he could not have succeeded without her. Together, they became symbols of a new kind of leadership, one rooted in humanity rather than destiny, in courage rather than fear, in love rather than conquest. One day, while navigating a quiet system, the heir received a message from the remaining council leaders. They had convened in secret, trying to rebuild their control. They demanded his return, threatened him with destruction, and reminded him of the prophecy he had defied. The heir read the message and smiled faintly. "They do not understand," he said to Lena. "Destiny is not a chain. It is not something to obey blindly. It is what we make it."
Lena nodded. "Then we continue forward."
"And we protect what matters," he agreed. The fleet moved on, not to conquer, not to rule, but to protect and to inspire. The galaxy had seen the consequences of power without compassion. Now it could witness what humanity, choice, and love could achieve. Months passed, and small alliances began to form. Systems once loyal to the Empire reached out to one another, not under threat, but through shared ideals. Trade, communication, and mutual defense became the new foundation. Slowly, quietly, the galaxy was changing, and the heir and Lena remained at the center of it, not as rulers, but as guides, as protectors, as symbols of a better way. The heir found moments of quiet in the midst of the ongoing work. He visited the blue world, disguised among ordinary people. He watched children play, farmers tend the soil, families laugh together. These simple acts, unnoticed by history, were the most important victories. Life continued, untouched by destiny's cruelty. He thought often of the palace he had left behind, the walls, the halls, the chains of prophecy. All were gone to him now. The crown he had worn was a memory, a burden he had willingly set down. He realized that true power had never been in symbols or titles. True power was in the ability to choose, to protect, to love, and to inspire others to do the same. Lena stayed close, their partnership unspoken, but deeply understood. They did not need titles. They did not need crowns. Together they had changed the course of history. Together they had saved countless lives. And together they would continue to shape the galaxy, not through fear, not through obedience, but through courage, compassion, and choice. One evening, while watching the stars from the deck of the lead ship, the Heir felt a small hand press against his. He turned to see a child, curious and unafraid, looking up at him. "Are you the one who stopped the weapon?" the child asked. The Heir smiled gently. "I was part of it," he said, "but it was everyone who chose life that made it possible." The child nodded slowly, as if understanding something greater than words. "Does that mean destiny can change?" The Heir knelt slightly, looking into the child's eyes. "Destiny is not something that controls us. It is something we create. Every choice matters. Every act of courage matters. And every life is worth protecting." The child smiled and ran back to play among others, unaware of the stars he had once been threatened by, unaware that his life had been shaped by the courage of two people who refused to obey destiny. The Heir looked at Lena. "This is the future we wanted," he said softly. But she nodded, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "And it will grow stronger with every choice made by those who follow it." The fleet continued to protect human colonies and other peaceful systems. The remaining council of the Empire was weakened, their power fractured, their threats contained. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned a new lesson. Obedience to prophecy was not stronger than the will to protect life, and fear could not overcome courage. The Heir often thought back to the palace of his youth, the golden towers, the endless lessons, and the crown that had once weighed so heavily on his head. He had left all of that behind. He had chosen a path no one expected, a path of love over duty, life over destruction, compassion over conquest, and he had never regretted it. In the quiet moments, he and Lena would walk among ordinary people, sharing in their work, their laughter, their struggles. He had discovered that the simple acts of helping, protecting, and caring were more powerful than any fleet, any weapon, or any throne. The galaxy was vast, but the small acts of courage and love created ripples that could reach every star. The humans of the blue world thrived. Farmers grew crops, children learned and played, families lived freely. And though they never fully understood the danger they had been spared from, their lives were proof of what the Heir and Lena had fought for. Every laugh, every smile, every act of kindness was a victory, a confirmation that destiny could be rewritten. Legends began to spread quietly. Stories of the small crowned heir who refused to destroy, who defied the empire, who saved countless lives. Stories of Lena, the brave woman who had stood beside him, sharing courage and strength when it was needed most. These stories traveled across the stars, inspiring others to question orders, to value life, and to believe that even in the darkest times, choice and compassion were stronger than fear and obedience. Years later, the Heir and Lena found a small planet, far from the battles, Far from the remnants of the empire, they built a home there, living simply, quietly, surrounded by people who had chosen to embrace life, courage, and compassion. They had no titles, no crowns, no symbols of power, but they had each other, and they had the galaxy slowly healing around them. One evening, while watching the sun rise over gentle hills, the Heir thought back on all he had faced. He thought of the palace, the fleets, the ultimate weapon, the human colonies, and the countless lives he had fought to protect. He realized that every choice, every act of courage, every moment of love had led to this quiet peace. Lena took his hand, her eyes reflecting the rising sun.
"We did it," she said softly. The Heir smiled.
"No, we only began it. Others will continue it. Life will continue, and choice will continue." He looked out at the horizon, where the stars would rise again in the night, distant and infinite. "Destiny is not a chain," he whispered. "It is what we make it." And for the first time in his life, the small crowned Heir felt free. Free from the burden of prophecy, free from the expectations of the empire, free to live, love, and protect life in all its fragile, stubborn beauty. The galaxy was no longer bound by fear. It was no longer ruled by prophecy. It was alive with choice, courage, and hope. And somewhere among the stars, countless lives continued, unaware of the small crowned Heir who had chosen love over destiny and whose actions had changed everything. The Heir and Lena stood together quietly, watching the future they had fought to create. No crowns, no symbols, no armies, just life, just love, and just the quiet, endless courage to choose what was right. And in that moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for every choice yet to be made, every life yet to be protected, and every act of courage that would continue to shape the stars. The story ended not with a crown or throne, but with freedom, hope, and the quiet power of love.